Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
Big show this morning, and we're going to get started right away with Darwin. Good morning, Darwin.
Good morning to you, ANITA. I have a very unusual story to report to you this morning.
What's new, Darwin?
my latest celebrity investigation. As you know, I have a current book out based on Ronald Reagan and his early days in Hollywood. But something very unexpected has happened. Ronald Reagan is back on the web and internet sites everywhere because of an invented scandal. Now, what has happened is the National Lampoon has a story out, and it's presented as a news story, and it's very realistic. In fact, part of the story is correct, using facts than fiction. But it went out to the world without the National Lampoon logo, and so the big story in Second Coming headlines is exclusive, Ronald Reagan's secret stag film. It's interspersed with actual pictures of Ronald Reagan. And for those uninitiated, they think it's a real story. You know, Gerald Sussman writes about you can buy barrels of films and stuff in Hollywood. They're just sold wholesale. So they said one man from Amsterdam went to Hollywood and bought all these excess films, and lo and behold, in the film barrel was a film from 1937 when Ronald Reagan was broke in Hollywood and needed money, and he made a stag film. Now, that's not true. He didn't, but it's presented in such a way that it appears that he did. And, of course, as you know, many stars, when they were struggling, ventured into porno, which was illegal back then in the 30s. In fact, the most famous example, which was all in the tabloids, I've revealed it in my book on Frank Sinatra. In 1934, he appeared as the masked bandit. And Sammy Davis Jr. wanted to play a trick on him, so he rented the Pussycat Cinema in Hollywood. And it was supposed to show Frank's latest film, and all this gale of people arrived, like Warren Beatty, just really the famous people in Hollywood. And then on the screen came a picture of stag film of Sinatra. Even though he had the black mask on, everybody in the audience knew who it was. And I understand that Sinatra nearly killed Sammy Davis Jr. for doing that to him.
But Darwin, tell people, maybe it sounds strange, but there might be some people who do not know what a stag film is.
Well, it was called the Blue Movie, and today it's porno.
Okay.
And I mean, but in the 30s, it was called either a blue movie or a stag film, meaning it was shown at only stag parties.
Okay.
But things are getting more complicated because with the technology today, it seems to have given a filmmaker an idea that he is going to do a very realistic film of Ronald Reagan in a porno movie. Now, you can say, well, how can he do that? Well, practically today, anything can be done. In fact, I write about a lot of that in my book. Reagan was really jokingly at Warner Brothers in the late 30s and early 40s called our bathing beauty, because he was always appearing in a bathing suit or in many films without his underwear. In fact, the Joseph Breen. Now, Joseph Breen, for those of a certain age, we know that used to be the censorship office of Hollywood. They had to approve scripts before they could be released. And I have never seen that in an actor's contract, but they had to specify how Ronald Reagan was to appear in his underwear. He was to wear only boxer shorts and an athletic supporter. This was all written into his contract. So what a filmmaker is going to do, I think, why is he going to do it? First, because of this lampoon is creating such an interest, but the film the porno film that Paris Hilton inadvertently posed for with Rick Solomon has now made $40 million for Rick Solomon. And it's been one of the hottest selling films of all time, and much to Paris Hilton's humiliation. But Rick Solomon is now a very rich man for having filmed his encounter with Miss Hilton.
Let me ask you about Ronald Reagan in one sense. When he was running for president and when he was president, did any of these things come out?
No, but there was nothing wrong. I mean, there was nothing. He didn't do anything that was illegal, immoral. He just stripped down a lot, and I mean, he even posed for a sculpture class at UCLA, and he was very proud of his body. And he posed with Susan Hayward and Lana Turner, and so. But now here is the thing that's being done. They have so much footage of Reagan, in his underwear or various things, that some filmmaker is going to take actual shots of Reagan in various movies and whatever, and intersperse them with the so-called stag film of 1937. So that will be actually Reagan in the close-ups, but then in the sex scenes, it will be some, I'm sure, long-dead actor from 1937 who actually made a stag movie. Is that making sense to you?
Sure. I'm hearing you. So
and he thinks he's going to make millions of dollars off of it. Now, someone has called and asked me. He said, "Well, will Nancy Reagan sue?" And no, she can. A lot of people don't understand. Family members cannot sue for libel. No one can sue for libel unless you're living. Once you're dead, you could say, John Brown was a serial killer, a child molester. You can say anything. Even people said Lyndon Johnson planned the assassination of John F. Kennedy. In fact, there are about 12 books that say he did that. Lady Bird objected, but all she could do is object. So once you're dead, you're dead, at least in terms of suing for libel. So someone can do this, and they just might pull it off. The most famous actor who posed for porno was Sylvester Stallone before he became famous, and the people who acquired the film, it was called The Italian Stallion.
I remember that.
And people tried to get him to buy up the copies. I don't know how he would be assured that all the copies were purchased, and he refused. And the film was advertised in a lot of underground papers. They even talked about it on the Johnny Carson show. One young actress, I forgot her name, came on and she said, I've just seen Stallone's The Italian Stallion. I think it should be called The Italian Pony. And of course, the audio. I mean, that's humiliating for Stallone. But this happens. This happens to actors all the time. Now, it is totally possible to do a realistic film. There is such a technology going on. I think there's been one example. I haven't seen it yet. I read an article recently that it may be entirely possible in a few years that you will see Marilyn Monroe and Humphrey Bogart appearing in a movie together. You may see Elvis Presley and Bette Davis in a movie together. I don't know if you've heard about this. But
No, I can understand that happening. Sure, they just somehow in the magic of the technology they have just put them, they splice something out and put it back. I don't know.
That means a lot of actors may be out of work if they're bringing back Bogart and Meryl. I think it's amazing. Now, I don't know the future of this film on Reagan, but I think it will at least get a lot of attention and some underground, at least exposure. Now, the oddest thing about it is, of all people to select would be Ronald Reagan. Do you know he did more to stop the flood of pornography than any president in the history of the Republic?
Really?
Mostly through Ed Meese, who was his pretty right-wing attorney general. And, of course, they had people like Larry Flynt of Hustler magazine, Bob Guccione of Penthouse, hauled into court. In fact, the most famous example, Jerry Falwell, who used to be the head of what was called the moral majority,
Remember that?
actually sued Larry Flynt, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And a ruling came down that was very important. At first, Flynt, the publisher, lost all the cases, but he fought it all the way to the justices themselves. And what happened is they were doing a series of lampoon advertisements, and it said, "My first time," and it was actually your first time to drink Campari, but the implication was it was your first time to have sex. And so they pictured Jerry Falwell with his mother.
Oh, that's...
And he was enraged.
Oh,
And to raise money for his legal defense, he sent out 750,000 copies of the ad, and then Larry Flynt countersued him for copyright violation. And it was fought out in the Supreme Court. And the ruling then came down that if you're a very famous person, you can be lampooned, and rather viciously, because, I mean, a John Smith unknown who lived in a side street of Boca Raton has a right to sue, maybe. But if you are a very famous person, then the judges rule that you can you have to suffer lampoon, even if it's slightly obscene. In fact, Elizabeth Taylor once sued, and the judge told her, "Miss Taylor, you cannot sue for libel because everything in the world that you could say about anybody has been written about you, so therefore libel just has to bounce off your back." I thought that was a stunning ruling to come down.
So is that why the National Enquirer and a lot of those newspapers can say the horrible things that you see on the cover? They show pictures of ugly people?
Well, yes, but they do get sued. I'm very familiar with them, and they have legal staffs, and they have had to pay out. Now, the tabloid press is amazing. Is often the stories it runs are true, and in fact, they have broken. We once talked about John Edwards, who was running for president. They broke that whole story about him and his mistress and the child he had out of wedlock while he was running for president of the United States. And then, of course, later the New York Times and other publications. A few times they've been way off when people have sued. Like, for example, I'm sure you remember the beautiful red-haired Irish Maureen O'Hara.
Yes.
I think it was the Globe ran a story of her, was caught having sex in a balcony. Well, she proved that she was at her home in St. Croix doing this, and she sued for libel. And Confidential was put out of business for with all the libel suits of the 50s, and then a newspaper, a magazine in London suggested that Liberace was gay, and he sued them and won £250,000 for intimating that he was gay.
Really?
And then Liberace was gay. An astounding revelation. And,
right. How could he win?
When all this stuff came out about Liberace and his gay life, the London magazine then wanted its money back, the £250 that it paid to Liberace. So it's a fascinating thing. The thing that I'm trying to say, though, Ronald Reagan, of all the presidents of the United States, would be horrified that he's going to be dragged through the porno world. And now, of course, there are those on the line who are saying, well, this is what he gets for trying to suppress free speech in America.
I see. Let me tell people. Wait a minute. You know, it's funny. People always say you never talk about the people. Tell the listeners who's on the show, because I become so infatuated with what you're saying. But this is Darren Porter. He's an author. He's a celebrity writer. He has a website that you'll find all the books they've written. It's called bloodmoonproductions.com. bloodmoonproductions.com. He just finished the book, Tricia Nixon. No, I'm sorry. The column. I was looking at the column, but let's talk about the actual book. Is Love Triangle, Ronald Reagan, Jane Wyman, and Nancy Davis. And you have lots of pictures in there. He's written so many fantastic books. The article that you can, we've just come out, of course, with our recent issue, which is now the April issue, and you will see his article on Tricia Nixon, First Daughter, First Lady, or Future Queen. That was a very, very good article. I didn't know much about her.
That's the article coming out in the Boomer Times. That's very typical of what I like to do. I like to investigate and explore little-known things about very famous people that we don't know about, and just have a new angle, a new way of looking at them. So in all of my, as you know, I don't write just about the Reagans. I write about the Kennedys. I mean, I do more than Hollywood. I do Hollywood, Washington. And now there is, and this has been authenticated by the FBI has a copy. A president of the United States did actually pose for a brief porno film, and I think you could guess which president that was.
I'm sure it was Clinton, wasn't
it? It would what?
Wouldn't it be Clinton or Kennedy?
Oh, no, it would be John F. Kennedy.
Yeah, John F. Kennedy. Well, I mean, Clinton, I would think.
And Clinton. Well, you may be right.
You just haven't looked. You haven't looked hard enough.
This was a film that actually 3 years ago was offered for sale. It was shot by Peter Lawford, who was the brother-in-law of John F. Kennedy and Marilyn Monroe in a bathtub at Peter Lawford. He lived with his wife, Patricia Kennedy, and they actually made this clip, and it got tremendous publicity. And then some collector, our Kennedy devotee, I don't know who purchased it. It was one of those, like at an auction, they sometimes don't tell you who purchased the $2 million Monet, and it was acquired by a private collector but it was actually shown to people in the administration and everything. So now Reagan had nothing to do. I mean, let's face it, President Kennedy was a bit wilder than Reagan, who had a very active life when he was a young man, but I don't think he did some of the things that Kennedy did. So it is not unknown, at least on the one instance, that a president of the United States did pose for, as I said, a stag film, which we now call porno. I don't know if you've ever heard that story, although it was in the papers about 3 years ago that the film was quickly purchased, and maybe it will resurface some other day. If you're going to become president, maybe it's not a good idea to pose for film.
Who knows, right? But I have to tell you, thinking about what you've been saying, and after you're finished with this interview, I'm going to talk about Naomi Wilczek, who is the owner of the World Erotic Art Museum in Miami Beach.
Noble lady.
Yes, she just passed away. But it's interesting how she says we just talk about nudity in such a way that she said, but we don't talk about war like that. She said, what's the problem? She said, it's so, let's enjoy bodies instead of having all this murder. So she was very right about that. And of course, and you and I, we think alike so much. And it is a shame that would put you out of business probably, but writing if everyone felt differently. But you're right. It is, everyone's a human being. And of course, I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but you're working on a couple of very exciting books now. And I don't know if you want to just wait and tell people later, or
well, I mean, I can mention them. In fact, I'm just okaying the galleys this weekend on Peter O'Toole, Hellraiser, Sexual Outlaw, and Irish Rebel. My God, what a man and what a life!
He was really gorgeous. His eyes were amazing. I can see his eyes today. Just looking at them, they were steel blue, or they were gorgeous.
But I think my book will show that his life off screen was more interesting than anything he did on screen, except for Lawrence of Arabia.
Oh, well, that was the most magnificent
and then I'm
movie.
going to be spending. She is about to announce for presidency, and I have to have a book on Bill and Hillary out by October, and it's amazing, their story. I only have about 35 big boxes of material on them, and I'm going through it now and discovering really some amazing things, and also what people said about them and things they have done. I have time for just one more revelation. Do I have a minute?
1 minute.
1 minute. Okay. There's a new book out, speaking of revelations, about this people served in the White House. And someone asked me, they said, have you read the book? And they said, what was the most interesting revelation you found? And I said, well, I was intrigued with the fact that late at night, the Secret Service often found George W. Bush running around the corridors of the White House with a fly swatter swatting imaginary flies.
Really? Serious?
I'm being serious.
Imaginary flies.
That's what makes my life as a journalist so interesting, you know? Listen, good luck this morning. Your show sounds delightful.
Darwin, thank you so much, and enjoy the spring in Staten Island.
I hope to.
And I'll talk to you
knows
next
what
time.
Tomorrow will bring
right,
to all
that's
of us, right.
Thank you so much, and take care of yourself.
Thank you.
All right, bye.